The smell hit me first. I was taking the trash out when I noticed one of the bags was heavier than usual. I ripped it open, thinking I'd find old leftovers or spoiled milk, but what I saw stopped me cold. Lying under greasy takeout boxes and soggy coffee filters was the necklace I'd made for my mom's birthday. The chain was tangled and bent, and the little note I'd written, "Thank you for always believing in me," was crumpled into a tight ball, stained with something dark. I just stared at it. My hands froze, but my chest felt like it was burning from the inside. I'd spent weeks making that necklace. Every night after work, I'd sit at my desk with tiny pliers, wire, and beads, adjusting each piece until it looked perfect. I'd saved up for the materials because I couldn't afford something fancy from a store. I thought maybe the fact that it was handmade would make it mean more. She'd smiled when I gave it to her earlier that day, but it wasn't the kind of smile that reaches someone's eyes. I told myself she was just tired. I'd wrapped it carefully in tissue paper and put it in a little box I'd decorated myself. She'd taken it, opened it, said, "Oh, that's nice," and moved on to talk about something my younger brother had done at school. I tried not to think too much about it at the time. Now I was standing in the driveway, looking down into a trash bag like it had punched me in the gut. She hadn't even waited a full day. Hours. That's all it took for my gift to go from her hands to the garbage. At first, it was like all the air got sucked out of me. I couldn't even feel my fingers holding the bag. My throat felt tight, and I just kept staring at the necklace as if maybe I was wrong, like it was some kind of mistake. But the truth was right there in front of me. She didn't want it. She didn't want me. The sadness only lasted a minute before it shifted into something sharper. I could feel my heart pounding in my ears. This wasn't just about a necklace. This was about every time she dismissed me, every birthday where she forgot to get me something, every time she'd compared me to my brother and made me feel like I'd never be enough. I picked the necklace up out of the trash and held it in my palm. It was still warm from the sun, but it felt cold to me. I put it in my pocket and tied the trash bag shut. I walked back into the house, set the bag by the door like nothing had happened, and went straight to my room. I sat on my bed for a long time, staring at the wall. My mind wasn't just sad or angry anymore. It was clear. I wasn't going to stay here and keep letting her treat me like this. I wasn't going to cry about it in front of her so she could roll her eyes and tell me I was being dramatic. I decided right there. I was going to leave. Not in some messy, screaming fight she could twist into being my fault. I'd leave quietly, and I'd make sure she realized exactly what she'd lost. I didn't know the full plan yet, but I knew this. I wouldn't be her punching bag anymore. And when I was gone, I'd make sure she felt it. I sat in my room, the necklace still in my pocket, and memories started pouring in like someone had opened a door in my head. This wasn't the first time she had done something like this. Every birthday I could remember, she had acted like my gifts didn't matter. The sweater I knitted in 9th grade ended up stuffed in the back of a closet. The little painting I made of our old family house was too bright for the living room, and left in the garage until it got ruined by dust and spiders. Even when I brought home good grades or won awards, she barely looked at them. "That's nice," she'd say, and then she'd move on to talking about something my brother did, like he'd invented the cure for cancer just by passing his driving test. My brother, 2 years younger, could do absolutely no wrong in her eyes. If he forgot to do his chores, it was because he was busy with schoolwork. If I forgot, it was because I was lazy. He'd get extra money for going to the movies with his friends. I had to fight for every dollar I needed for art supplies. She'd post about his Little League games and his achievements all over Facebook, but when I had an art exhibit at school, she didn't even come. I thought about her face earlier when I gave her the necklace. It wasn't just that she didn't care. It was the way her lips curled slightly, like she'd found it funny I'd even tried. "Oh, this is nice," she'd said, stretching out the words like she was trying to make them sound genuine. Then she gave me that look, the one that said she was tolerating me, not appreciating me. My brother had walked in 2 minutes later and told her he'd gotten a B on a math test, and she lit up like someone had turned on a switch. That was when it clicked for me. This wasn't about the necklace. It wasn't about that one moment. It was about years of being the afterthought, the one she could brush aside without a second thought. And I was done being that person. Leaving had been my first thought, but now it didn't feel like enough. If I just walked away quietly, she'd tell everyone I was being dramatic or ungrateful. She'd spin it into some story where she was the victim. No, I wanted her to feel it. I wanted her to notice the hole when I was gone. I wanted her to miss my help with the laundry, my cooking when she was tired, the way I cleaned up after my brother without being asked. I didn't say anything out loud. I just sat there and let the plan start to form in my head. First, I needed to make sure that when I left, I didn't have to come crawling back. That meant I had to prepare. I pulled my backpack out from under the bed and started gathering the important stuff. My birth certificate, social security card, bank paperwork, even my passport, just in case. I tucked them into a folder and slid it to the back of my desk drawer where I knew she'd never bother looking. Money was next. I had a little saved from my part-time job at the bookstore, but not enough to get far. I started going through my things, picking out what I could sell without anyone noticing. Old electronics, clothes I never wore, art supplies I didn't need anymore. I listed them online in small batches, so it wouldn't draw attention. Every time I passed her in the kitchen or living room, she had no idea I was already planning my exit. She'd still ask me to run to the store or watch my brother while she went out. I'd smile, nod, and do it, but inside I was counting down the days. I wasn't just leaving. I was taking everything she took for granted with me. And when I was gone, she'd finally know what it felt like to be treated as if you didn't matter. I started spending more time on my phone and laptop, not scrolling for fun, but looking up ways to move out without anyone noticing. I read about how to change your mailing address, how to close accounts, and even what kind of questions landlords ask. I kept a small notebook hidden in my pillowcase where I wrote down every step I needed to take. I couldn't risk forgetting something and having to come back. Money was still the biggest problem, so I kept selling whatever I could. I told Mom I was just cleaning out my room when she asked why things were disappearing, but she barely cared enough to look up from her phone. I posted my old camera, a pair of boots I'd barely worn, and even my guitar. Each sale made me feel lighter, like I was slowly cutting the strings tying me here. There were some things I couldn't sell, things that actually mattered to me, but I knew I couldn't leave them in the house until the last minute. I started taking a few items at a time in my backpack whenever I went out. My friend Jenna lived about 15 minutes away, and she didn't mind holding on to them. At first it was just a small jewelry box and some sketchbooks. Then it was my favorite jacket, my laptop, and even the blanket my grandma made for me before she passed away. By the time I was done, my room still looked normal, but all the important pieces of me were. Mom must have noticed something was different because one night, while I was washing dishes, she asked, "Are you mad at me or something?" I told her no, just tired from work. She shrugged like she'd already lost interest and went back to watching TV. She didn't push for answers. She didn't seem to care enough to. Around that time, Jenna offered me something I didn't even know I needed, a place to stay. She had a small spare room in her apartment, and her current roommate was moving out soon. It wasn't fancy, but it was safe, and it was mine if I wanted it. The rent was cheap enough that my savings could cover a few months until I got settled. The thought of leaving without saying a word made my heart race, but I knew it was the only way to make it work. If Mom found out too early, she'd try to stop me, not because she wanted me around, but because she didn't want people to think she'd driven me away. I needed to leave at a time when she'd be too distracted to cause a scene. That's when I remembered she had a big work event coming up, the kind she spent weeks obsessing over. She'd be dressed up, busy entertaining people, and gone most of the night. It was the perfect chance. I circled the date in my hidden notebook and wrote one word next to it: go. From then on, everything I did was quiet and deliberate. I avoided fights. I answered her questions with short, harmless replies. I didn't want to give her any reason to look closer. On the outside, I was just her daughter going about her normal routine. On the inside, I was counting the days until I walked out of this house and didn't look back. The morning of Mom's big event started like any other, except I woke up with my heart pounding. I moved through the house quietly, making breakfast and acting like nothing was different. She was already in a rush, talking on the phone while putting on her makeup, asking me to make sure the place looked spotless for when her coworkers stopped by later. She handed me a list of small tasks: refill the snack bowls, make sure the living room looked neat, and greet people if they arrived early. I nodded like I would do it all. In reality, my plan had been set for weeks. While she was upstairs fixing her hair, I slipped into my room and took out the last things I'd kept hidden: a small duffel bag with clothes, my toiletries, and the envelope of cash I'd been saving. I moved quickly, carrying bags to my car in small trips, so it wouldn't draw attention if she happened to look out the window. Each time I walked back inside, my pulse sped up, but she never noticed. By the time she came downstairs in her dress, I'd already loaded everything I cared about into the trunk. She was too focused on herself to notice my car parked differently, or the fact that my room looked a little emptier. She gave me a quick reminder to be helpful before grabbing her keys and heading out. The door shut behind her, and for the first time, the house felt like it belonged to me. I went straight to the kitchen table and pulled out a scrap of paper. I didn't want to waste words or give her anything she could twist into a guilt trip. I just wrote, "Don't look for me," signed my name, and left it where she'd see it the moment she walked in. It wasn't angry. It wasn't dramatic. It was final. Before I walked out, I grabbed my phone and turned off location sharing. I went through my contacts and blocked her number, then did the same for my brothers. If they wanted to talk, they could go through someone else, but I wasn't giving them direct access. I deleted a few old group chats that still had family members in them, knowing it wouldn't be long before they started asking questions. Driving away felt unreal. My hands were tight on the steering wheel, and I kept checking the rearview mirror even though I knew she wouldn't be home for hours. The farther I got from the house, the lighter I felt. I didn't blast music or roll the windows down like in a movie. I just drove in silence, letting the quiet sink in. When I pulled up to Jenna's apartment, she was already at the door, smiling like she'd been waiting for this moment. She helped me carry my bags inside, and we set them down in the small room she'd cleared for me. The walls were bare, the bed was a little creaky, but it was mine. I sat down on the mattress and felt something I hadn't felt in years: control. We ordered takeout and ate on the couch, talking about everything except my mom. For the first time, I wasn't worried about how late I stayed up or whether I left a dish in the sink. No one was going to yell at me here. No one was going to act like I was in the way. Over the next few days, I kept my online presence quiet. I didn't post my location or mention anything about moving. A few cousins sent me messages asking if I was okay, saying Mom had been trying to reach me. I gave short replies without detail. I knew some of them would report back to her, so I kept everything vague. Every step I took was another cut in the thread that tied me to her. I wasn't disappearing out of shame or fear. I was disappearing because I finally had the chance to live without her shadow hanging over me, and I wasn't going to waste it. The first unknown number came 2 days after I left. My phone lit up with an area code I didn't recognize, but something in my gut told me it was her. I let it ring until it stopped. A few minutes later, another call came from a different number. Then another. She was trying every trick to get through, but I didn't answer a single one. By the end of the week, my messages started filling up with long paragraphs from relatives and old family friends. Some said things like, "Your mom is worried sick," or "Family is all you have, don't throw it away." Others were sharper, accusing me of being ungrateful and selfish. I didn't reply to them either. I knew if I gave even the smallest answer, they'd take it as an opening to drag me back into the drama. Instead, I focused on showing the version of my life I wanted people to see. I started posting pictures online, me laughing with friends at a cafe, walking through the park, cooking dinner in my new place. I made sure the backgrounds never revealed my location, but the smiles and bright colors told the story I wanted. I was fine without her. Not long after, I started hearing about her Facebook posts. I didn't have her blocked there yet, but I didn't need to read them to know what they were like. People told me she was posting vague quotes about children forgetting who raised them, and how easy it is for some people to turn their back on family. It was her way of making herself look like the wounded one, painting me as cold and heartless without actually naming me. The more she posted, the more people in her circle began to notice the cracks. A couple of mutual friends reached out, not to pressure me, but to say they'd always seen how she treated me differently from my brother. They didn't say it outright, but I could tell they were starting to question her version of events. One afternoon, I got a text from an old neighbor. She told me my mom had been at a gathering and tried to bring me up, but someone cut her off and asked why she never went to my art shows or posted about my work. Apparently, Mom didn't have much to say after that. Hearing that made me feel a quiet kind of satisfaction. I didn't need to confront her. The truth was finding its way out on its own. More messages trickled in from distant cousins and people I barely knew, each one a different attempt to get me to make peace. Some were polite, some were guilt-laced, but all of them got the same treatment: silence. I wasn't going to let anyone pull me back into a place where I was ignored until I could be used for something. The longer I stayed quiet, the more it seemed to bother her. I could imagine her sitting there, scrolling through my smiling pictures, wondering how I could look so happy without her. And that, more than anything I could have said, was the point. It started with a community dinner at the local hall, the kind of event my mom loved because it gave her a chance to be the center of attention. She showed up in a bright dress, talking and laughing loudly, making sure everyone noticed her. From what I heard later, she used the night as another chance to tell people how I'd suddenly left home, how she was worried sick and didn't know what went wrong. She painted herself as the perfect, loving mother who'd been blindsided by her ungrateful daughter. But not everyone was buying it. A few people she'd known for years decided to speak up. One woman, whose daughter went to school with me, asked why my mom had never supported my art shows or attended my awards ceremony. Another brought up the time I had to hitch a ride to work because my mom refused to help, even though she'd driven my brother wherever he wanted to go. My mom tried to laugh it off, saying people were remembering things wrong. But the questions didn't stop. I didn't hear about this directly from her, of course. Jenna's mom had been at the dinner and told me everything later. Apparently, Mom's smile got tighter and tighter as more people pressed her. She still tried to keep her voice light, but you could tell she was cornered. That night, something else happened, something I hadn't planned but was glad for. Weeks before, I'd gone through our old home security footage while she was out. I'd found the exact clip of her tossing my handmade necklace into the kitchen trash, crumpling the note, and shoving it down under greasy containers. I hadn't shared it with anyone at the time, but a friend of mine who'd seen it still had a copy. Somehow, that clip ended up in the neighborhood group chat. People thought it had been accidentally sent, but I had a pretty good idea how it got there. The video spread quickly. Comments flooded in, people asking why she would do that, saying how cold it was, wondering what kind of mother could throw away something her child made with their own hands. A few defended her, saying maybe it was a misunderstanding, but most didn't hold back. Her reputation took a hit fast. The same people who used to greet her warmly at events started keeping their distance. Invitations stopped coming as often. Even some of her closest friends started staying quiet on her Facebook posts. For someone who lived for attention and praise, it must have felt like the ground had been pulled out from under her. Not long after, she tried to reach out to me again. The calls from unknown numbers started up, but now there were also emails, long, emotional ones that sounded more desperate than before. She wrote about how misunderstandings had ruined our relationship, how she never meant to hurt me, and how she missed having me around. She said she didn't understand why I wouldn't just talk to her so we could clear the air. I read them, but I never replied. I didn't block her email, but I didn't give her what she wanted either. Every unanswered message seemed to make her try harder, and I knew that the silence was more powerful than anything I could say. She wanted me to give her the chance to explain, to make herself look good again, but I wasn't going to give her that gift. Instead, I kept living my life, spending my time with people who actually wanted me around. I didn't have to defend myself or explain my choices to anyone who mattered. The truth was out there now, and I didn't have to lift a finger to make it happen. Watching her face the consequences she'd earned was enough. One morning, I opened my email and saw her name in the inbox. It wasn't a short message. It was paragraphs long, filled with the kind of words that looked like apologies at first glance, but fell apart when you read them closely. She wrote about how things got out of hand, and how she was just under a lot of stress back then. She talked about the difficulties of raising kids, about how nobody's perfect, and about how I'd probably understand better when I'm older. What she didn't do was take any real responsibility. I closed the email without replying. I didn't even save it. She wanted a reaction, and I wasn't going to give her one. A few days later, my phone rang. It was my brother. His voice was quiet, like he didn't want someone overhearing. He said Mom was losing it, pacing around the house, barely sleeping, checking her phone constantly. He said she'd been asking him to try and talk me into coming home. I could tell he felt caught in the middle, but I didn't let the conversation go far. I told him I was fine and changed the subject. Then the offer started. First, it was a gift card to my favorite store, sent to my email with a note saying, "No strings attached, just thinking of you." Then it was a text from an unfamiliar number, offering to transfer me some money to help out. I ignored those too. Not because I didn't need the money, but because I knew it wasn't about generosity. It was bait, a way to make me feel indebted to her again. Seeing her try to win me back with things instead of genuine care only reminded me of all the times I'd begged for her attention and gotten nothing. I remembered sitting at the kitchen table years ago, asking if she could come to one of my art shows, and hearing her say she was too busy. I remembered the birthdays where she barely looked up from her phone, the times I'd been sick and still made my own dinner while she watched TV. She'd had so many chances to show kindness when it mattered, and she hadn't taken them. This time, I wasn't going to make it easy for her. Ignoring her wasn't just about staying away, it was about shifting the balance. For once, I wasn't the one chasing after her, trying to earn scraps of approval. She was the one scrambling to get my attention, and I realized I could push it further. I didn't plan on anything loud or dramatic, just small moves that would keep her wondering. A picture of me out with friends at a place she used to love, posted without any location tags. A quick story online about a new project I was working on, just enough to show I was moving forward without her. I wanted her to see I wasn't struggling, that I didn't need her money or her gifts or her empty apologies. The more she tried to reach me, the more I pulled back. I wasn't doing it to be cruel. I was doing it because I finally understood what it felt like to hold the power in our relationship. And I wasn't ready to give that up. I had always helped more around the house than Mom realized. I wasn't paying the mortgage or anything big, but I'd been covering small bills for months. The streaming services she used every night, part of the internet bill, and even the groceries sometimes when she forgot her. I'd been doing it quietly because it was easier than arguing. But now there was no reason to keep helping. From my new place, I logged into the accounts and canceled my payments. I removed my card from the shared grocery app and unsubscribed from the services tied to my name. I didn't announce it, and I didn't warn her. I just stopped. It didn't take long for the effects to show. A week later, my brother called, annoyed because the internet had been shut off for a couple of days before Mom could pay it. He didn't say it outright, but I could tell she was having trouble keeping up. He mentioned her complaining about how expensive everything is now, and how she didn't know why the bills had suddenly gone up. I kept my mouth shut and let him believe whatever story she gave him. A little later, I heard from a mutual acquaintance that she'd started borrowing money from friends. The way they said it made it clear she wasn't getting much sympathy. People were already pulling away from her after the video of the necklace had made the rounds. Some of them didn't want to be associated with her at all anymore. She had built her whole social image on being admired, and now it was crumbling. The shift in how people treated her must have been obvious. Even Jenna's mom said she'd seen my mom in the grocery store and noticed she was quieter than usual, almost avoiding conversation. The big smiles and loud greetings she used to give people weren't there anymore. It was like she didn't know how to act when she wasn't in control of the story. I also heard from my brother that her job had started to suffer. She worked in a position where being friendly and well-liked mattered, and lately she'd been making mistakes, forgetting things, and showing up late. The stress was wearing her down, and it showed. Through all of it, I didn't reach out. Not once. Every problem she faced now was one she'd helped create, even if she didn't want to admit it. I wasn't going to step in to make things easier for her like I always had. I wasn't going to fill the gap she had taken for granted for so long. She still had my number blocked on her end of things, but I knew if I opened that door, even a little, she'd push her way back in. So I left it shut. I stayed quiet, letting her deal with the life she'd built without my help. And for the first time, I didn't feel guilty about it at all. The first voice message came late at night. Her voice was shaky, almost hard to understand between the sobs. She said she just wanted to talk, that she didn't care about the past anymore, that she missed me. I deleted it without replying. The next day, another message came, this one even longer. She talked about how empty the house felt, how she hadn't been sleeping, how she wished we could start fresh. A few days later, my brother texted me. He said Mom had finally admitted she was wrong, that she'd been telling people she should have treated me better. He asked if I'd at least meet her somewhere so she could apologize in person. I didn't give him an answer right away, but the thought stayed with me. If I was going to meet her, it wouldn't be on her terms. I chose a cafe I liked, a small, busy place where she couldn't cause a scene. I told my brother to let her know I'd be there at a specific time, and that if she was late, I'd leave. When she walked in, she looked different. Her hair was messy, her clothes weren't put together like usual, and her eyes were red. She sat down without saying much at first, then started talking. She said she was sorry, that she didn't realize how much she'd hurt me, that she wished she could take it back. Her voice cracked, and for the first time in years, she didn't seem in control. I listened without interrupting. I didn't argue, and I didn't comfort her. When she was done, I told her it was too late. I said I wasn't coming back, that I'd built a life without her, and I was keeping it that way. Her face fell, but I didn't let it change my mind. I stood up, told her to take care of herself, and walked out. I didn't look back. My new apartment wasn't big, but it was mine. The first night I slept there, I kept the window open and let the city sounds drift in. There were no slammed doors, no footsteps pacing the hallway, no tension in the air. Just quiet. I unpacked slowly, placing my things where I wanted them, and for the first time, the space felt like it belonged to me completely. I found a new job at a small art supply store a few blocks away. The people there were kind in a way I wasn't used to. They asked about my day and actually listened to the answer. I started making friends, people who didn't see me as a problem to fix or a burden to carry. We'd grab coffee after work or walk around the park on weekends, and I began to realize how different life could be when you were surrounded by people who valued you. I still texted my brother now and then, mostly short messages to check in on him. We didn't talk about Mom much. I didn't need to. She was still out there, but she wasn't in my life anymore. Every so often, a package would show up at my building, a sweater, a book, sometimes just a card with my name written in her handwriting. I never opened them. They stayed in a box in the back of my closet, untouched. She also sent the occasional email or message, but I never replied. I'd read them once, then move on with my day. It wasn't anger keeping me from answering anymore. It was knowing I didn't owe her my time or attention. The peace I felt wasn't loud or dramatic. It was steady. It came from knowing I had taken control of my life, from not having to shrink myself to fit someone else's expectations. I didn't need her approval anymore. I didn't need her at all. One evening, I found the necklace in the drawer where I'd kept it since the day I pulled it out of the trash. I held it in my hand, feeling the cool metal against my skin. It wasn't about the necklace itself. It never had been. It was about what it stood for, the effort, the care, the hope I'd once put into her hands, only to have it thrown away. Now, I didn't need her to value it. I valued myself. And that was something I was never going to give up again. Was I wrong for cutting my mom out of my life completely, or was it the only way to finally find peace? I'd love to hear what you think in the comments. And if you enjoy real-life stories like this, make sure to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss the next one.